But my mom told me that she's, oh, I want you to hear this tape from this lady that been to hell. And I go, oh, really, Mom? What was her name? She's Mary Kay Baxter. Well, about a week before this, I should have backed up and said this, a week before this, we had met with Ruckins McKinley, a friend of ours, and Ruckins, I ended up telling him the whole story, and Ruckins said, Bill, you have to go get a book by Mary Kay Baxter, this lady that's been to hell and seen everything you're describing, so go get the book. So we read it, couldn't put it down. I wanted to meet her so bad, just to talk to somebody that's been there. Then I thought, how am I going to meet this lady? She's, you know, who knows where she's at. But my mom told me she'd listen to this tape, and anyway, it turned out to be Mary Kay Baxter. Well, then my mom called back a couple days later and said, Bill, you won't believe it, but she attends our church. I said, you're kidding us. You didn't know that? She said, no, I didn't know, because she's never here. She's only here 4 or 5 days of the year, because she travels all around the world speaking. She speaks everywhere. For the past 10 years, she's been speaking. And I said, man, I'd sure like to meet her. Anyway, long story short, she arrived the same day as us in Florida to come visit her family. And so she went to the church, and we went that next Sunday morning at the church, and we got to meet her. And so that was a miracle. The odds of her showing up at that time, we got to meet her, and I got to sit down and talk to her. And I knew in talking to her in 5 minutes, I could tell she had been there for sure. And she had that same burden for the lost. That where you look at people differently now. Everybody you look at, you're thinking, well, most of these people probably aren't saved. What can I do? I've got to get to them. I've got to think of a way. And you're thinking that way all the time. Anyway, she's been a blessing, so I've got to meet her, and she came out to California and spent some time with us. And so God confirmed it in so many other ways. There were so many things God did in the next month or so. It's too long to share with you now, all these different things that's happened, but God's confirmed it in a lot of different ways. And so we've been so blessed, and He's been opening up doors to go speak, even though I don't like to speak. I don't like the microphone. I never have. And I really avoided any kind of public speaking my whole life to do this. But the Lord told me to go do it. And He's confirmed it by when I've spoken and people have come forth and gotten saved. Then it makes me think, well, He's fulfilling His part. He said, you just tell it, I'll convict their hearts. So that's been a real blessing. But I also investigated. I want to find out if anybody else had been there, you know. And there's been about 11 people that I have found, discovered, that have been on TV, on TBN and so forth, that have given their testimony. So I wanted to gather up some of their testimony, see what they've said. And so we've got 5 on a video. Just they've given their testimony like an hour long, but this is just 2 minutes of each one telling what they've seen. And then there's 2 more, and I'll just read a little blip out of their book, what they saw. And then after that, so the video will be the 2 minutes of each. And then Mary Kay Baxter and myself, my pastor got like 150 hours of different Hollywood movies together that's trying to depict what hell would look like. Even Disney has one, The Black Hole. So we looked through all these movies trying to find anything that looked really real. So we put together 3 minutes of what the realest Hollywood could do. Okay, it's still Hollywood, and it's still like a sensationalized thing, but it's not even nearly as bad as it is there. Okay, so it doesn't even reflect how bad it is, but at least give you an idea of a little bit of what it looks like. And in Kenneth Hagin's testimony, you'll see when Kenneth Hagin gives a testimony when the Lord showed him hell, or he actually went to hell, the demon that he saw at the gates, the one that it shows is the exact same one that was in my cell. Wow. So if you want to see what one looks like, I don't know who drew it or how he got, but that is it. So that one is real accurate. When it shows Kenneth Hagin going down and coming up to the bars of hell, when you guys see that, just look at that face of that demon, that one. Also in the video, it shows a woman running. Now I don't know how, Mary Kay said that there were some people there that were running, and because they lived in fear all their life on the earth, that now they're chased by the spirit of fear in hell. Forever they're running by the spirit. It catches up to them and it burns, consumes them with all their flesh, and then they drop over and then they run again and then it consumes them. So they're running continuously. I don't know how they get the strength to run. I don't know, but there's different levels of torment. Just like Dr. Eby, he went to hell and he was in a cell, but he was in silence. He was in silence, and so he didn't hear the screams. He was in the he was in the opposite, in total isolation and dead silence, never to see anybody. So he just tells his testimony. So I'll read a piece of each of theirs. We'll watch the video, and in the 3 minutes, so you understand the woman running. That was the scene of that. But just quickly to read, Dr. Lester Sumrall. You probably all know who he is. A wonderful man of God, I tell you. Read his book, and you feel like he lived in Africa and all over the world and witnessed to everybody, and just went through so much in his life and ministry of like 68 years and just died recently. But the Lord gave him a vision of hell. And he said, I'll just read just a minute of it here. He said, I saw before me all the people of the entire world. They walked down a very long and wide highway leading away from me. God lifted me up until I was looking down upon the uncountable multitude of humankind. He took me far down the highway until I saw the end of the road. It ended abruptly at a precipice towering above a bottomless inferno. When the tremendous, unending procession of people came to the end of the highway, I could see them falling off into eternity. As they neared the pit and saw the fate that awaited them, I could see their desperate but vain struggle to push back against the unrelenting pressure of those to the rear. The great surging river of humanity swept them ever forward. God opened my ears to hear the screams of the damned souls sinking into hell. God brought me nearer. As men and women of all nations plunged into that awful chasm, I could see their faces distorted with terror, their hands flailed wildly, clawing the air. And he goes on and on. He goes on even to say that the Lord told him it was his fault. And he said, how is it my fault? And he said, because you have to go and tell them. And he said he wanted a scripture for that. And the Lord gave him a scripture in Ezekiel 3:18, where it said it's our fault if we don't go preach the gospel. We're accountable. And then Dr. Eby, if you know who Dr. Eby is, he has been on TBN back in the 70s. This happened to him, and he's been around for a long time. He's a gynecologist and obstetrician, and he had died and he was a Christian, died and went to heaven. He was died overnight, 24 hours, and they put him in cold storage and all that, and got him out the next day and to embalm him, and he came back to life. So he's a credible story, testimony. And but then 2 years later, the Lord said, I want to show you hell. So he took him for 2 minutes only. He said, it's all you could bear, 2 minutes, and he was in a cell. And I'll just read a little blip of what he said, what he went through. He said, my 2 minutes of hell started. Instantly, I realized I was a dead sinner being taken to the lowest bowels of the earth. A sense of absolute terror gripped my being. The immensity of my isolation in the stark darkness and soundless silence was overwhelming. In the depths of earth, my isolation was terrifying. No one could help me but Jesus, and he was gone. My mind was lightning fast. I would never see another person. I could never break out. I would never hear a voice again. I heard demons taunt me, and damn God and damn people. And the smell, horrid, nasty, stale, fetal, rotten, and evil. Stinking, crawling demons, mentally delighting in making me wretched. I would now have an eternity of inescapable nausea besides all the rest of hell. My terror mounted until I was ready to collapse into utter hopelessness, crushing despair. I was an eternally lost soul by my own choosing. By my own choosing. So he goes on and on about it, but that just gives you an idea. That's two of the people, so we didn't get them on video. But, you know, when you hear these other people's testimonies along with the others, you know, it's all the same. Everybody has seen this same thing. And we really need to get out there as Christians and tell the world. But if we can, then let's watch the video just for a few minutes.
Everyday people like you and me, living their lives 1 minute and the next they lay dying, having never known or believed the message of salvation. They traveled from this world to one beyond, but what they found was pure terror. They returned, and these are their true stories.
So I knew, see, I had a condition that was called acute hemorrhagic, necrotic pancreatitis. You don't live with this disease. I was an atheist. Now see, it's very easy to be an atheist when you're successful. You have worked your way from Oklahoma welfare to being one of the most powerful men in your part of the country, one of the most powerful men in the state of Oklahoma in relationship to political. It's very easy to be an atheist when you have done all of that. A man can sit back and say, I don't need God. What is God? But it's very difficult to be an atheist when you're laying on your deathbed, because you begin to think, what if these people are right? When I'm laying on my deathbed and knowing that I'm going to die, guess who I thought about? I thought about, what if Ron is right? What if there is a heaven and a hell? And so the most immediately, the most pressing thought in my mind is, how do I get saved? What is saved? As I'm laying there in bed, I would begin to fade away. I would begin to fade away, and as I would fade away, I would begin to go down. Now, it was like darkness. It was so dark. It was like the very darkness just penetrated into your very, very being. And as I left, and I can tell you I left my body, because I remember when I came back into my body. You know, I don't know where I was out of my body. Now, there are people that talk about a light. There are people that talk about floating above. There are people that talk about a feeling of warmth and love. I didn't feel any of that. I felt none of that. I felt untold terror. Untold terror. Because I knew that if I ever went all the way, if I slipped all the way, I would never get back. Now, in my beings of beings, I knew that.
And as he was talking to me, it appeared like the ambulance literally exploded in flames. I thought it had actually blown up. It filled with smoke, and immediately I was moving through that smoke as if through a tunnel. And after some period of time, coming out of the smoke and out of the darkness, I began to hear the voices of a multitude of people screaming and groaning and crying. But as I looked down, the sensation was looking down upon a volcanic opening and seeing fire and smoke and people inside of this burning place screaming and crying. They were burning, but they weren't burning up. They weren't being consumed. But the most terrible part of it, I began to recognize many of the people that I was seeing in these flames, as if a close-up lens on a camera was bringing their faces close to me. I could see their features and see the agony and the pain and the frustration. And a number of them began to call my name and said, Ronnie, don't come to this place. There's no way out. There's no escape. If you come here, there's no way out. And the smell was like sulfur, like an electric welder. And the stench was terrible.
And when I came to, Dr. Alex was giving a CPR. And he asked me what was the matter because I was looking so scared and so forth. And I had told him I'd been to hell, I needed help. And he said, well, keep your health to yourself. I'm a doctor, I'm trying to save your life. You need a minister for that. As he was giving me CPR, he was trying to install a pacemaker with the other hand and do it with one. I would fade out. And then he'd start again and bring me back. I watched what was going on, like some people say I was floating in the air or up on the ceiling. I was up above it and could look down and see things.